looks like Frankenstein.
Hey, what's the matter? Haven't you guys ever seen anybody from the planet Vulcan before? Beep, 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 beep.
That is weird, man.
Cut it out, guys.
The movie Mask made Rocky Dennis a hero. It made $48 million and won awards. But Rusty Dennis said it was all a lie. In her final interviews, she revealed what the cameras never captured: Rocky's experiments with LSD, the biker gang that raised him, and the girl whose parents ripped her away the moment they saw his face. From prison cells to broken promises, this is the story Hollywood refused to tell. Rocky Dennis was born on December 4th, 1961, in Glendora, California. His full name was Roy Lee Dennis. At birth, nothing seemed unusual. His mother, Florence Rusty Tullis, was 25 years old, and to her, Rocky looked like a perfectly normal baby. For the first 2 years, there were no signs of anything wrong. He crawled, walked, started to talk, just like other kids. The family had no history of bone disorders, no reason to worry, no way of knowing what was coming. Rocky even had an older half-brother named Joshua from Rusty's previous relationship. They were just a small family living in California, unaware that their world would be turned upside down by a single X-ray. In 1963, when Rocky was 2, he was scheduled for a routine tonsil surgery. That's when it happened. An X-ray technician, just doing his job, saw something odd in Rocky's skull. It was the kind of detail most would miss, but this technician didn't. He flagged it. That single image changed everything. Rocky was sent to UCLA Medical Center, and for the next year, his tiny body was scanned, poked, tested. He visited specialists multiple times every week. And then, in 1964, came the diagnosis: craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, CDD, also known as Lionitis. At the time, only 7 people in the entire world had ever been diagnosed with it. The doctors didn't hold back. They told Rusty straight up her son's skull would grow so thick, so heavy with calcium, that it would crush his brain. His eyes would be pushed to the sides of his head, his hearing and sight would fade, and he wouldn't live past 7. They spoke like they'd already given up, but Rusty hadn't. Rusty wasn't the kind of mother you'd expect. She had a past. Born in Brooklyn in 1936, she was wild from a young age. She smoked weed at 14, dropped out at 15, rode with bikers, danced in clubs. She once worked with a motorcycle stunt team until her drug use got her kicked out. But all that chaos, all those sharp edges, somehow made her the exact kind of mother Rocky needed. She didn't believe in pity. She didn't believe in limits. When doctors told her to institutionalize her son, she fought back. She told them he was smart, he was kind, and he was going to school like every other kid. And that's exactly what he did. Rocky enrolled in public school at 6. Administrators didn't like it. They said other kids would be scared. They said his intelligence would suffer. But none of that happened. Rocky quickly became a top student. He loved learning. His skull might have been growing at twice the normal rate, but his brain worked just fine. He made friends easily. Kids at camp voted him most good-natured and friendliest camper. He never saw himself as disabled. Neither did Rusty. The disease kept progressing. By age 6, Rocky was legally blind. His vision was 2200 in one eye and 2300 in the other. Doctors told him he'd never be able to read. Rusty refused to accept that. Right then and there, she handed him a book, and he read it out loud. To her, to the doctor, to anyone who would listen. He refused to learn Braille. Instead, he demanded large print books. That same year, he'd already been to 42 eye appointments. The medical visits never stopped. Weekly checkups at UCLA became routine. Bone scans, pressure tests, painful probes. He handled it all without crying. Nurses were stunned. For someone so young, his pain tolerance was unreal. And when he got headaches, which he often did, Rusty didn't hand him pills. She told him to go into his room and fix it with his mind. Don't come out until you've made yourself well, she'd say, and somehow that worked. Rocky learned to control his pain through breathing, through focus. He didn't just survive, he adapted, but their home life was far from normal. After Rusty divorced Rocky's father, Roy, in 1971, when Rocky was 10, their Covina home became something else entirely. Biker friends came and went, motorcycles lined the lawn, music blared, and the smell of weed filled the air. Rusty was still partying, still using drugs, even with a sick child in the house. But these same bikers, tough, loud, chaotic, ended up forming a strange kind of safety net for Rocky. They loved him. They protected him. They made him feel like he belonged. His His older brother Joshua played a big role too. Born in 1955, Joshua was 6 years older and carried a lot on his shoulders. He saw it all: the disease, the chaos, the arrests. He saw his mother overdose. He saw the darkness that crept in behind the scenes, and still he tried to shield Rocky from it. Years later, Joshua moved to San Francisco and became a writer. He died from AIDS. That part never made it into the movie because, yes, there was a movie. In 1985, Mask came out telling Rocky's story. Rusty said, "I didn't realize the movie would be about me too." She was right. It showed the love, but not the whole truth. It didn't show the drugs. It didn't show the time she was at her lawyer's office, facing charges, when Bernie, her boyfriend, called to tell her Rocky had died. That was October 4th, 1978. Rocky was 16 years old. He had more than doubled his life expectancy. He had read books, won awards, made friends, gone to school, and stayed smart and funny until the very end. Craniodiaphyseal dysplasia is one of the rarest conditions in human history. 1 in 220 million births. Less than 20 cases ever. Most doctors never see a single patient with it. By 1965, when Rocky was 4, only 7 people in the world had ever had it. It twists the face, swells the skull, blinds the eyes, crushes the brain. And yet, Rocky Dennis beat every prediction. He didn't just live, he lived his way. In September 1967, a boy named Rocky Dennis walked into Ben Lomond Elementary School in Covina, California. He was 6 years old. Most kids starting school have nerves about making friends or learning to read, but Rocky had a much bigger battle just to be allowed inside. His head was twice the normal size. Calcium had spread through his skull, pushing his eyes far apart, twisting his nose, stretching his features into something that many found hard to look at. Some teachers and parents didn't want him there. They were afraid of how he looked. They said he might scare the other children, but his mother, Rusty, who wore leather jackets and rode motorcycles with the Turks biker gang, didn't care what they thought. She fought back hard, told them they had no legal right to keep her son out of a regular classroom, and made sure he sat in the same chairs and read from the same books as every other kid. Doctors had said Rocky wouldn't live to be 7. They said he'd go blind, go deaf, and eventually become mentally disabled. But Rusty didn't believe in limits. Neither did Rocky. In fact, his first-grade teacher remembered that he took longer than most kids to pass because of how poor his vision was. He was legally blind. His eyesight measured 2200 and 2300. Still, he didn't give up. He went to 42 eye appointments by age 7. Teachers gave him large print books and audio lessons. Other kids struggled with reading, but Rocky somehow helped them, tutoring them in basic math and sounding out words even when he could barely see the page himself. He never said much about how he pulled it off. When one eye doctor told his mother he'd never read, she handed him a book. Rocky read it out loud without missing a word. When asked how, he said, "I don't believe in being blind." By the time he hit 3rd grade in 1970, Rocky wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. He couldn't write well because his fingers were starting to stiffen, but he made up for it by remembering everything. He knew every date in California history, every Spanish mission, every gold rush detail. During group assignments, his classmates would write down what he said while he narrated entire historical timelines from memory. His teachers were stunned. They had never seen a kid who could hear something once and remember it forever. He couldn't draw maps, but he could describe every landmark down to the smallest detail. Slowly, the same teachers who once questioned his place in their classroom began to admire the way his mind worked, but it wasn't always easy. In spring 1971, Rocky was 10 years old when a group of older boys on the playground attacked him. They threw rocks. They screamed names like "freak" and "monster." He came home bleeding. That night, he asked his mother why he was so ugly. Rusty didn't soften the truth. She told him something that would shape the rest of his life. If people laugh at you, laugh with them. If you act beautiful, people will see you that way. From that point on, Rocky used humor like a shield. He started telling jokes about his face before anyone else could. He once wore several Halloween masks over each other and claimed they were stuck on his face. The other kids laughed, not at him, but with him. That same year, he entered the school science fair. He was 10 years old, nearly deaf in one ear, partially blind, and constantly in pain. But he built a working volcano out of baking soda and vinegar, painted his own tectonic diagrams, and stood for 15 minutes explaining chemical reactions to the judges in detail. They didn't believe he had done the project himself until he started describing how magma chambers build pressure and erupt through the Earth's crust. He won the Blue Ribbon, a $25 savings bond. Ireland, and his name appeared in the Covina newspaper. More importantly, his classmates started seeing him as one of the smartest kids in school, not just the one with the face. When Rocky moved to Sandburg Junior High in Glendora, things didn't get easier. By age 14, his skull was crushing his brain. His headaches were unbearable. He was hard of hearing, completely legally blind, and still refused painkillers. Instead, he used self-taught breathing techniques to handle the pressure. Despite everything, he sat in the front row of every class. He helped other kids with their homework in the library. A teacher named Barbara Silva remembered walking in and seeing him patiently explaining math to a struggling student. His report cards were filled with honors. Doctors who said he'd never speak or walk were long proven wrong. One of the school counselors tried to move him to special education. Rusty threatened to sue. In history class, Rocky gave a presentation on the Trojan War that no one forgot. He talked about Paris and the Golden Apple like it was a beauty pageant. He described Helen of Troy as having a face that launched 1,000 ships. He made horse noises when describing the Trojan horse and added jokes about Greek soldiers hiding inside it. The class erupted in laughter and clapped at the end. It wasn't just sympathy. They were actually impressed. When some students still stared too long, Rocky would shrug and say, "If I make you uncomfortable, you can move. I can't change my face." Before graduation, Rocky was offered a spot as a counselor's aide at Camp Bloomfield, a summer camp for blind kids. At first, he wasn't sure if he could do it, but the camp directors saw something in him. They knew he could teach from experience. He showed kids how to find their way around without sight. He helped them learn how to trust their step. At camp, Rocky also fell in love. Her name was Diana Adams. She was blind too. She ran her fingers along his face to see him. Rocky taught her about colors using textures. Warm stones for red, icy ones for blue. But when Diana's parents saw Rocky, they were horrified. They cut off contact. It broke his heart, but he never spoke badly of them. He just moved on, quietly. Most people didn't know the cost behind his smile. Every word he spoke made his head throb. At home, life wasn't peaceful either. Rusty's house had motorcycles parked on the lawn and drugs on the coffee table. LSD, weed, cocaine, everything passed through their living room. Rusty once said, "I partied all the time and drugs were part of the lifestyle." Rocky tried some of it himself once. Then he told his mom, "I don't know why people do that stuff. I'm already higher than most people." Neighbors whispered that Rusty's drug use caused Rocky's condition, but doctors said that wasn't true. It was a 1 in a million genetic disorder, passed from both parents. At Sandburg Junior High, kids noticed him not because of how he looked, but because of how he carried himself. He cracked jokes, helped kids with math and history for $3 an hour, and somehow made struggling students actually sit still and learn. His teachers couldn't miss it. Rocky walked away with honors, prizes, and real friends. There were camps where he was crowned friendliest camper, best buddy, most good-natured, not out of pity, but because kids just felt better around him. His mother, Rusty, said it best. He was real funny, and that was enough to pull people in. But his home life was a whole other universe. Rusty was deep into the biker scene, wrapped up with the Turks motorcycle gang. Their house looked more like a parking lot full of Harleys than a family home. While other kids got picked up in station wagons, Rocky climbed onto three-wheel choppers after school. Neighbors called the place Tobacco Road. There were dopers, loud parties, drugs flowing like soda. And Rocky was right there in it, trying to make sense of two worlds that didn't match. His half-brother left at 17 because it all got too much. Rusty didn't deny any of it. She said the drugs weren't a problem. They were just part of the fun. But Rocky wasn't blind to the mess. He tried marijuana, LSD, a few other things. Then one day, he looked at her and said, "I don't know why people do that stuff because I'm higher without it than most people are with it." That line stayed with her. It said everything. The friendships he made weren't always built to last. He had this close bond with a kid named Ben. They collected baseball cards, planned to bike across Europe someday. Rocky couldn't play baseball, but he could name stats like a radio announcer. Then Ben got a job offer in Michigan, $7.50 an hour. He took it. Rocky felt abandoned, like the dream died on the spot. He didn't hide it. He said it straight. You left. And that's what hurt the most. When someone chose something else over the future you built together in your head. At school, Rocky didn't take crap from anyone, even though he had plenty of chances to. When people mocked his face, he usually beat them to the punchline, laughed at himself so they couldn't. That's how Rusty had taught him to survive. But high school was different. He was alone. No junior high friends, just strangers and cruel looks. One day, some guy crossed a line. Rocky slammed him into a locker. It wasn't his usual style, but everyone has a limit. After that, people started to respect him. They invited him to parties, looked at him a little differently. In 1977, Rocky got a job as a counselor's aide at Camp Bloomfield. That's where he met Diana. She was blind, couldn't see his face, didn't need to. Rocky didn't just talk to her, he taught her colors with warm rocks and frozen stones, cotton balls for clouds. Red felt hot from the sun, icy blue felt cold and sharp. Diana got it. She laughed with him, listened when he recited poems about the sky. That summer, they kissed at a fake New Year's Eve party under string lights. He'd never kissed anyone before. She said it changed her. It changed him too. After camp ended, Rocky didn't just move on. He biked 10 miles every week to see her at the stables near Griffith Park. 10 miles while legally blind, with headaches that felt like a hammer inside his skull. But he did it. They groomed horses together, talked about traveling across Europe. He'd stuck pins on maps in his room. Paris, Rome, Vienna. He wasn't just dreaming. He believed. But Diana's parents saw his face up close and everything changed. They pulled her out of his life without telling her, sent her to a boarding school. They took her letters, blocked his calls. Rocky kept trying. He thought she just didn't want to see him anymore. That broke him. He started pulling away from friends. His world got smaller. He knew time wasn't on his side. Doctors had said he wouldn't live past 7. By 16, he'd already beaten the odds. But that didn't mean he had forever. That spring of 1978, when Diana disappeared from his life without warning, it hit harder than the disease. Rocky had fought his condition every day, fought stares, pity, loneliness. But losing her like that, without a goodbye, without a reason, was something he couldn't fight. He didn't want to. By the mid-1970s, Rocky Dennis's skull had grown to nearly twice the normal size. Calcium kept building up, changing his face and slowly pushing his eyes farther apart. At 6 years old, doctors said he was legally blind, measuring 2200 in one eye and 2300 in the other. But Rocky still learned to read. By 7, he had already visited eye doctors 42 times, not even counting all the other specialists. His mother, Rusty, taught him how to handle the headaches, breathing exercises, focus techniques, anything to calm the pain inside his head. Whenever the pain came, she'd tell him to go to his room and make yourself well. That was her belief. If you could make yourself sick, you could make yourself better. The headaches didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. By September 1978, he was in a wheelchair. He spent the last 3 weeks of his life like that. Doctors offered him surgery. It might have helped with the pain, maybe even extended his life. But Rocky said no. He asked his mother, "Who will I see in the mirror if I change my face?" That was his way of saying he'd rather live as himself than become someone else. He had been under UCLA's care since he was 2, and the option for plastic surgery was serious. But he stuck with the values his mother had drilled into him. When he was just 7, standing in a hotel lobby in Las Vegas, he had laughed at a little person. His mother bent down and told him, "Everyone can look like anyone else, but no one can look like you." Take pride in that. He never forgot it. That's why he never changed. Life at home wasn't stable. Rusty had been in and out of trouble, mostly for drugs. On the same day Rocky died, October 4th, 1978, Rusty wasn't home. She was at her lawyer's office trying to fight a drug charge. Bernie, her boyfriend at the time, called her with the news. After Rocky's death, her legal problems didn't stop. She went to prison for meth in 1996, again in 2002, and one more time in 2005. She lived in a world full of biker gangs, drugs, and constant court dates. A screenwriter once said Rusty was not the PTA Mother of the Year, but still the perfect mother for Rocky, because through all the chaos, she never let him feel sorry for himself. Rocky's pain didn't just come from his condition, it came from the life around him. The headaches were part of every day. His skull pressed harder and harder against his brain, and he had to retreat into himself. When it got bad, he'd go to his room like always, trying to fix it with the only tools he had, his breath and his mind. On the night before he died, he did the same thing. He woke up at midnight, said the pain was back, and his mom comforted him before telling him to go try and heal. 3 weeks earlier, the pain had gotten so bad that he couldn't walk anymore. He had to stop tutoring other students, something that gave him real meaning. By that point, even with his biker uncles around, Rocky had started pulling away from everything. That group, the Turks, had been a big part of his life. They were rough, but they treated him like family. They brought food, rides, and real protection when people stared too long in public. But their lifestyle was loud and wild. They drank, they did drugs, they fought. That was the air Rocky grew up in. On his last night, they threw him a party just to make him smile. Rocky had started high school just weeks earlier. He had graduated junior high with honors, even though his teachers tried pushing him into special education. But high school wasn't kind. One day, a student teased him one time too many, and something in Rocky broke. He slammed the boy into a locker. It was out of character for him, but the weight of it all was starting to crack his armor. His mom's voice telling him to be proud wasn't enough anymore. Then came the final blow. His dream trip to Europe with his best friend Ben fell apart. Rocky had spent more than a year planning it. Every country, every stop, every route pinned on his wall. Then Ben showed up and said he was moving to Michigan. His dad had offered him $7.50 an hour to work full-time. Rocky couldn't believe it. "I don't want the freaking money, Ben. I want to go to Europe," he said. Ben replied, "That's all you talked about." That one line broke everything. Rocky shouted, called him stupid, slammed the door, and after Ben left, he walked back to the wall and started pulling the pins out, one by one. That map stayed there, but now it was empty. After that, he changed. He barely left his room. He barely talked. He didn't eat much. The boy who used to make everyone laugh just faded into silence. He stopped going to the biker parties. He didn't want to be around the drinking and the drugs anymore. His body was failing fast, but so was his spirit. The European map on the wall stood there like a ghost of what could have been. On the night of October 3rd, 1978, there was one last party at the house. Rusty and the bikers tried to cheer him up. Later that night, Rocky woke up from sleep with a horrible headache. Rusty comforted him, like always, told him to go to his room and try to fix it. Before he went, he made her promise, "I don't want to be on one of those machines." She swore to him that if it came to that, she'd pull the plug. He looked at her and said, "I want to die at home." That was the last thing he ever said. The next morning, Rusty was away at her lawyer's office when the call came. Bernie told her Rocky had died in bed. He was 16. He had gone to sleep with a headache and never woke up. Rocky had made another decision long before that. He told his mom he wanted his body donated to science. He didn't want a grave. He wanted doctors to study his condition, craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, and try to help others like him. That's exactly what happened. UCLA used his skull and remains to study calcium buildup and bone disorders. Medical students studied him for decades. There was no funeral, no headstone, just quiet cremation after his body had served its purpose. Before she died in 2006, Rusty opened up in a few interviews. She admitted that the movie Mask told only half the truth. She said Rocky had experimented with weed and LSD during his teens. She admitted that her house was wild, full of drugs and bad choices. She said it wasn't the fairy tale the movie showed, and she confessed that she never got over the fact that she wasn't home when Rocky passed. That guilt followed her until the end. But Rocky's story still mattered. It helped doctors understand his rare condition. It helped change school policies for kids with disabilities. The film made $48 million, but what really lasted were the ripples from his life. The medical journals, the lessons, the conversations. His journals, found later, showed a boy with fears, doubts, and pain that even the bravest face couldn't hide. But through it all, he never stopped being Rocky, and that made all the difference.